Well, hello, and a very warm welcome to tonight's special online event, LinkedIn for Successful Executive Job Search. So we're just waiting for a few more people to arrive in the room. Quite a few people expected. Hello, Dion. In fact, that's a great idea. So this is a live webinar. So you hopefully have found the question box. So if you find the question box, perhaps just type where you're dialing in from. This evening it is for me. Of course, it may be daytime for you. And I'll do a few call outs for people as they do that. There's normally a slight delay on the line, so while you do that, while you find the question box, so hi Stuart in London. While you do that, I'll carry on and talk about what you can expect from tonight's session. Hi Ian. Quite a few people coming in now. So okay, good. I know the technology works. You can hear me, and hopefully you can see the screen, which is to my left as well, where I'll share some stuff with you as we go through. So when I do webinars like this, it's always quite difficult because people have different levels of experience. And in particular, when you talk about something like LinkedIn, there are people who have never really dealt with LinkedIn before. And there are other people that have used LinkedIn more extensively. And what I've just tried to do with this webinar, as you'll see, is to really cater to everybody, or try and cater to everybody. So we're going to start off with some of the more basic stuff, but it's hopefully a good refresher for those of you that are more experienced on LinkedIn to go back and think about whether your profile is actually sending the right message. And then we're going to move into some of the more advanced stuff that I do and I use personally. And this is all about LinkedIn automation. There are people on the call tonight. Hi Andy from Australia, good to see you here. There are people on the call tonight that are currently clients of mine. There are people on this session that perhaps have consumed some of my content, and there are people on this session that perhaps have never heard of me or seen what I do before. So with that said, what I'm going to do is do a very, very quick introduction. I don't want to eat into too much of the kind of teaching education time, but a quick introduction I think is important. My name's Simon Gray. I'm a former professional recruiter, spent 10 years in the industry, but for the last 5 years have been working with executive clients from across the world to help them navigate the job market successfully. If you're active in the executive job market, you know it can be a lonely and unforgiving place. And while there are people out there who are set up to help you, executive search firms and whatnot, if you're not getting the response you expect from them, then what else can you do? Well, my whole philosophy, which I outline in this book, Super Secrets of Successful Executive Job Search, is that you can take proactive control of your executive career and your future. And in actual fact, it's not the executive job market that you need to really think about. What you need to worry about and what you need to think about is what you bring to bear in the market. So it's about your beliefs, your thoughts, and the action you're prepared to take on a consistent basis. That's really what it's all about. So this whole methodology that I've developed is really to help people define, find, and secure the position they really want, and that's important, the position they really want, not just the position they've seen advertised or had presented by executive search firms. So it puts the power in your hands. By the way, in fact, let me just jump back. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to do so. If you're not connected already, send me a connection request, add a quick note to let me know you're on the webinar, and I will gladly accept that connection request. I've got about 10,500 first tier connections. You'll see why that's important a little bit later on, because the more connectivity you have with people with high levels of connections, the more reach and visibility you have on the platform. So feel free to do that either now or when the webinar is over. So there was some pre-webinar reading that I asked you to go and have a look at. So just let me know if you've read this article. In fact, let me pull it up. I've got it on the other screen here. Let me pull this article up. How to write a LinkedIn headline. This is on my my website. In fact, I'll take the URL now, and I will just copy that and pop it in the chat box, so you've got that if you don't have that. If you don't have that already, just let me know if you've read that. Okay, Andy, yes, read it yesterday. Great stuff. I like to put some pre-webinar reading out, because this is one of the questions that I get asked all the time. How do I put together my LinkedIn headline, my LinkedIn professional headline, they used to call it? And this is some important reading to do. We're not going to go into great detail on this on the call. Basically, the message that I deliver here is that you should never have currently seeking opportunities or anything similar to that as your LinkedIn professional headline. And I talk about why this is a mistake here. And I advise that you think about three things. Think about work, wow, and wonder. And that's going to help you to crop up in the search results a lot more readily. It's also going to help to position you and your message to your target audience. So if you didn't manage to read that, don't worry. But my recommendation is that you have a look at that after. And if you can't find the link or you lose the link, just shoot me an email, let me know, and I'll gladly send that to you. Okay, so let's move on. So what we're going to cover on this session, we're going to cover three things, and we're going to move quite fast. I am recording this, so I will get a recording out to you a little bit later on today. We're going to cover three things. First of all, impactful profile, key things you need to get right. And for those of you who are currently clients of mine, this is the shop window that I talk about. So it's things you need to get right on your profile to increase the probability that you'll crop up in the search results and you'll be seen by the right people. Then we're going to talk about using LinkedIn proactively to uncover and sometimes even create executive opportunities in the place I call the hidden market. And if you're not familiar with that term, I'm going to explain what I mean by the hidden market in just a moment. And in fact, just a side story, the catalyst for my writing my first book, Super Secrets of the Successful Job Seeker, was that I used to get people coming into my office all the time. I was a professional recruiter. People would come in, and one of the questions I would always ask executives that I met was, do you have a LinkedIn profile? And the majority of people at the time, in fact, maybe not the majority, probably about 70-80% of the people at the time said yes. And then I would ask a subsequent question and say, well, what are you doing on that platform? What are you using that platform proactively? And that's when silence fell and people looked at me as, well, what do you mean? I've got a profile, isn't that it? And the answer is absolutely not, because you have to use the LinkedIn platform not only as creating an attractive shop window, but to use it as a proactive engagement tool, because you can use it proactively. And the Career Codex methodology that I talk about and teach is all about going to the market proactively to get the results you want. And then finally on the webinar, we're going to talk about automation strategies to supercharge results. And this is when it gets quite exciting. Sometimes people have a problem with automation strategies, and it maybe contradicts, it doesn't actually, but I'll explain why later, contradicts some of the advice on LinkedIn that it's about one-to-one relationships. But all of my clients, I show them this stuff, and many of them have used some of the automation strategies that I recommend, using some of the tools I recommend to really increase their reach and visibility and to supercharge their results. And the more people you are connected to on LinkedIn, especially if it's the right type of people, the type of target decision makers you're looking to reach, then the more reach and visibility you have, and that means you're more likely to be seen and heard. So this is the stuff that if some of the more basic stuff I'm going to cover early on, if that if you know that stuff, then you're probably going to want to hang on for the automation strategy stuff, because it can get quite sophisticated, and I'm going to get through to that quite quickly. Then we're going to have some time for Q&A. So if you've got questions on LinkedIn, the best thing to do is to pop those in the question box as you think about them. I'll either pick them up as we go, or I will deal with them at the end, and I'll stay around. This is due to run till 8 o'clock GMT, so end in 50 minutes, and I promise I'll stick around and answer all your questions until you're fed up of asking questions. So don't worry, we will get the questions answered. Okay, so let me ask you a question if you're on this call. Who is familiar with the term the hidden market? Obviously, my clients on here are going to be familiar with that, but if you're new to Career Codex, are you familiar with the term the hidden market? Just type a yes or a no in the box. Andy says yes, very familiar. Ian, yes. Dion, yes. Letitia, yes. Sue, no. Okay. Couple more no. Stuart, yes. Jeff, yes. Okay, good. If you're not familiar, don't worry. I'm going to explain exactly what it means, and I'm going to cover that off now. Now, one of the things that sometimes people don't appreciate, I know many of you do because you've said yes, is that executive career opportunities, yes, they exist in the public domain. Yes, they exist with executive search firms, and they exist on executive job boards. But before they get to that stage and get into the public domain, they probably already exist as well. And they exist in the mind of the employer. The employer on this diagram is over to the right. And what a typical employer will do and I know this because I have been an employer, and I've spoken to many employers over the years, and they've told me when I was a recruiter that they were doing this before they came to me. What they'll do is they'll consult their networks. They'll consult their immediate networks first, the people they really trust, then their extended networks, and they'll ask the question, who do you know that I should be talking to? Who could be perhaps right for my position? And these are conversations 1 and 2, I call them, that happen in the hidden market. And it's hidden because the majority of people don't tend to know about it. Okay. Now, what happens then? If they don't get anywhere, they go to conversation 3, and they have a conversation with either an executive job board or an executive recruiter about placing an advert or positioning an opportunity with a recruiter to go out and source a shortlist. And that's when the opportunity becomes in the public domain. And one of the problems people have in the executive job market is if that's their sole strategy of relying on executive job boards and executive recruitment companies, then they're in competition with everybody else, and it can be very difficult to get your voice heard because there's competition, there's mass competition. And I always remember the last position I advertised as a professional recruiter. It was for a finance director position in London, and within within a space of hours, I'd had 250 odd applications. And it doesn't matter how great your skills and experience are, there is a probability that with that many people vying for the same position that you won't get seen and you won't get shortlisted. And that happens far too many times for me that has happened far too many times for me to mention. And even in the past, when putting candidates in front of employers, sometimes they wouldn't read the CV, wouldn't read the resume, and wouldn't make the right decision on who to see. And it just makes it more and more difficult the more competition there is. Now, as I say on the title of this slide, the game has changed, and the game has well and truly changed in recent years. It used to be that employers had to go to recruiters because they didn't have their own database. An employer didn't have a database that they could pull up candidates on. They may have had some candidates that they met in the past, of course, and they were reliant on a recruiter's database. And the value in a recruitment company was about the value of their database, who they had on their CRM. And, recruitment companies would spend lots and lots of time building their CRM, their contact base, because that was their value. They had access to the people that the employers wanted. Now, that game has changed because now everybody has access to the best database in the world. And the best database in the world is LinkedIn. And it's a great database for recruiters. And as I left the recruitment industry, I was using LinkedIn more than my own CRM, my own database. And there was a reason for that. And the reason for that is this, that the LinkedIn database is current because it's kept up to date by the individual. And the individual has a vested interest to keep their profile up to date. So what LinkedIn does now, it gives employers the opportunity to go directly to the market without the need for engaging an executive search firm or putting an advert on an executive job board. So they have access to the hidden market. They have another way to access that hidden market or to tap into the hidden market. And recruiters are using LinkedIn more. You'll find as you start to raise your LinkedIn presence that you'll get approaches from both executive recruiters and you'll get approaches from employers if you targeted your profile properly. Now, you may get approached by employers or recruiters, but don't forget that through LinkedIn, you can proactively go directly to employers, go directly to executive recruiters. And I talk about a three-pronged approach in the executive job market. My advice is forget job boards, because behind a job board, there is a recruiter or there is an employer. So there's a three-pronged attack. You go to the right executive search firms and you approach employers directly, target decision makers in employers directly, whether advertising or not. And in actual fact, it's better if they're not, because then you're in the hidden market. Or you leverage the power of a special group of individuals called market makers, which we're not going to have time to cover on the session. But this is basically well-connected individuals in a particular profession, industry, sector, or geography that can make introductions to employers and get you ahead of the market. And getting ahead of the market means putting yourself in a position where there's you and perhaps one or two others who are talking to an employer while they're in the process of trying to make those recruitment decisions, conversations 1 and 2. So hopefully that was a useful refresher of the hidden market. The key thing with the hidden market is you have to believe it to see it, because it's hidden. So if you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't taste it, it can be quite difficult to believe in it. And one of the things I focus on heavily with my online program is that you've got to understand the executive job market environment. You've got to understand the psychology of success. If you get those two foundations right, that shows you why the hidden market is the high probability place to play, and how to do it and how to believe in it to actually take the action to get the results. So hopefully that was a useful refresher. Okay, so we're going to move on now to what I promised. We're going to talk about how to get your profile right, how to create an impactful profile. And what I'm going to do first off is refer you to this. Excuse me. This is the LinkedIn Executive Playbook. Now, I don't know whether you've seen this. I've posted this out on my blog post this week. Basically, it's LinkedIn's kind of reach out to the executive market, not just the job market, but to executives on their platform, to kind of give a bit of a refresher as to how you should position yourself on the platform. And I thought, well, it would be quite useful to use this. LinkedIn have published it, so it's current, it's important. So let me give you a quick refresher about how you create an impactful profile and use this tool as a way to do it. And then I will pull up a LinkedIn profile, pull up mine and show you exactly how to do it. So the first thing to note is that LinkedIn advise, and I've highlighted this in yellow, that having a complete profile is important. Okay, I can't emphasize this enough. And this is one of the big mistakes that I see people making all the time on LinkedIn. LinkedIn gives you an opportunity to do stuff, to position content, and people don't take that opportunity. Now, LinkedIn is a website. Okay, it's a website, and all of us will be familiar with Google. We know a bit about websites, and what Google's job is to do is to serve up the best content based on keyword search. Okay, so the stuff you type in the search box, Google wants to serve up the best information to you. And in the website business, if you've got your own website or whatever else, if you do not have an up-to-date website, you don't have if you've got a website with broken links, if you've got problems in how your website is presented, there's things missing, you haven't optimized it properly, what Google will do is it will downgrade your website, because it doesn't want to serve up the wrong kind of information to the right kind of people, which are its clients. And it's exactly the same on LinkedIn. And this is what they're saying very, very early on. Step one, have a complete profile. Okay, have a complete profile. So what does that mean? Complete profile, impactful profile, what does that mean? So let me jump forward a few places now. Go to page 20. So this is Jeff Weiner, CEO at LinkedIn, and he's emphasizing some of the things that you need to get right, some of the things you will be aware of. The photo, okay, the LinkedIn banner. Not everyone has a LinkedIn banner, an image banner at the back. They have the LinkedIn default one. This is a really good opportunity to communicate something about you, your sector, your geography, to your target audience. It just makes your profile nicer to look at. So make sure you do it. You can create the dimensions for a particular banner using something called Canva, C-A-N-V-A. It's a free tool to create images of all different sizes. So just getting that right is important. Talked about the headline, which sits here. That is in the article that I shared ahead of the webinar. It will be in the email that I sent you. Go back and have a look at that. It's all about work, wow, and wonder. And then we get into some of the more interesting stuff. We'll talk a bit about location first off. Now, location is an area that people can make a mistake with as well, particularly in the executive job market. If you are moving geography, so let's say you're based in the US, you're moving from West Coast to East Coast. Okay, if you set your location as West Coast, city in the West Coast, then you're going to get found in search results because people are going to search on geography generally. So you want to think about your destination location. That's the most important. So if you are relocating, you want to put your destination location because that's where you want people to find you. That's where the employers are based. That's where the recruiters are based that you want to talk to. Now, some people might say, well, is that really a good idea? Aren't I kidding things? Well, no, not really, because you're positioning your profile to be found in the location that you're heading to. And all you need to do then is communicate this in your summary. Okay, this is the bit that sits under your profile. And this summary highlights the first two lines. You can see that before clicking see more. And it's basically an extra LinkedIn professional headline. And what I'd say about the summary as opposed to experience, and LinkedIn is pointing this out here, is that your summary is more personal. So the kind of things you want to put in your summary is, I am passionate about. You write it on a kind of first term basis. I'm passionate about this. This is what makes me tick. This is what I've done. It's as if you were talking to somebody across the room from you. You're having a conversation and you're talking about what makes you tick, what you're passionate about, perhaps some of your key achievements. Experience is more like your CV or resume, so it's more it's third person. It's about your work history. What we're really looking for here is key achievements, and key achievements have a start, a middle, and an end. They're stories. You start the story with the situation you faced. You talk about what you did, and then there should always be a quantifiable result. And the other thing LinkedIn says here is pictures and videos. They own something called SlideShare. Gives you an opportunity to upload articles you've been quoted in, video content on there. You'll see my profile has quite a bit of video content on there, some articles and stuff that I've been quoted in. So if you're not making best use of this, my advice would be to do so, because it makes your profile sticky. When people land on your profile, they're going to see some rich media content and they're going to be intrigued. If we see a video, we have to click the play button. If we see an article, the temptation is to click on it, particularly if it has a catchy title that would reach out to your target decision makers. So hopefully some refreshers of basics there. I think the important one there, if you are more experienced on LinkedIn, is about location. It's about your destination location as opposed to anything else. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up my LinkedIn profile. And I'm going to talk about a couple of other things. And the first thing I'm going to say is that I get quite a few people emailing me through LinkedIn asking me to review their profiles. And the first question I'll ask in response is, well, okay, what's your destination? And for my clients on here, you know what I'm talking about. But LinkedIn is about positioning you in terms of your target decision maker, and what you have to decide is, and I mentioned this at the start, it's define, find, and secure in the executive job market. You've got to define where you're headed. What kind of organization do you want to work for? What kind of role do you want, and where is it based? We're back to location. And what I found over the years being in the executive job market as a recruiter and now as an advisor, is that quite often the majority of people react to what they see out there, and that's their kind of clue as to what they should be doing. Apply for a job here, apply for a job there, and they never really step back and think about what it is they want. They never sit down and define the type of organization and do that really clinically, surgically define the organization they want, define the type of role, and define the location. But that's the starting point, because until you know where you're headed, you don't really know what content to emphasize on your profile. Okay, my LinkedIn profile speaks very much to my target audience, which is senior executives in career transition. Looking to advance their career within their sector or transition to a different sector altogether, career change. So my profile speaks very much into that space, also to the non-exec space where I do some work with recruitment companies. So you have to know where you're headed. So spending some time to do that is very, very important. A couple of the other things in terms of an impactful profile. Let me ask you all a question. How many of you have a paid premium account? You'll know that because you'll probably have this symbol. Don't necessarily have this symbol with a paid account, but how many of you have a paid premium account? You're spending money with LinkedIn. Okay, Ian says I do. Andy, yes. What's interesting is all of my clients on here are saying pretty much yes. Quite a few of my non-clients are saying, well, no, not yet. Okay, Jeff says yes. Okay, Tony says yes, I do. Yeah, okay, good. So I used to advise something different a little while back. I used to tell people don't bother. I can show you exactly what to do on LinkedIn. You don't need a premium account. But my story has now changed. And my story has changed since Microsoft took over LinkedIn, because they put a lot of the good stuff behind the paid wall. And really, it's pay to play now. So my advice is, yes, you absolutely need a paid profile. And when it comes to automation strategies, you absolutely do, because otherwise LinkedIn will limit you. For example, I had a message from somebody a little while back. They messaged me through LinkedIn and said, somebody I knew, they said, I don't really understand. LinkedIn stopped me from connecting to people. And I said, well, I understand, and the reason they've stopped you connecting to people because your activity has suddenly increased, and because you're not paying for the privilege. What LinkedIn says, they have an algorithm in the back. They'll say, well, okay, you usually connect to about 3 or 4 people a week. Suddenly you're connecting to 30 people. That's unusual activity. We're going to hold you back a little bit. before we allow you to connect to people again. If you have a paid account, you don't have any of those problems. And let me show you a few other reasons why you would want a paid account. And I have Sales Navigator. You'll see that up here. Sales Navigator is more B2B. I've used this for quite some time. I've used Business Premium before. What I would say is go for the generally the cheapest option that will give you, unrestricted access to people on the platform. That's generally Business Premium, although I keep changing the names here, there, and everywhere. So, usually the cheapest paid program is probably the best program for you. Sales Navigator is a little bit more expensive. Okay, a couple of things. First thing is this. If I go in here and click on here, you'll see that I am displaying my badge. That's a good idea. It shows people I'm serious on the platform. But make sure you have open profile. Okay, open profile. Now, this is important. On LinkedIn, you will have something called InMail. If you have a paid account, you can send emails. And as open profile says, this premium feature allows anyone on LinkedIn to contact you directly for free, even if they're not connected with you. So you make it easier for people to get in touch with you, even if they're not connected. And on LinkedIn, if you're active in the executive job market, you want as less barriers as possible for people to be able to connect with you. My advice on InMail, by the way, for what it's worth, is that I personally don't use it. I go direct for a connection request, but with a personalized message. Because I think with InMail, when people receive InMail, I receive quite a bit of InMail, they know that somebody's paid for the privilege. And, this is about one-to-one connections. It's about relationships. I think if you are polite and courteous, and certainly been my experience over the last 15 years, if you are polite and courteous in your direct approach, you get a far, far better response. But you want to have your open profile set to yes. The thing I want to show you here as well is something called career interests. And if I go into jobs here, you can set your career interests, and some of the recruitment companies, they have a special recruiter type LinkedIn platform, and you can basically communicate with them using career interests here, and you switch that to on. Just be warned here, they're going to hide this from your current company that you're open, but you can't guarantee complete privacy. So that's saying, yeah, we're not going to tell your company you've got this set to on, but we can't guarantee it. So you have to be a little bit cognizant of that. There is always a risk when you put stuff online that people are going to see it, and that's your current employer if you're making a transition while you're still employed. So just be a little bit careful. But it can be a useful tool because it crops up in terms of the recruitment companies who have a special platform that allow them to see this. Okay, so that's all I really wanted to talk about in terms of an impactful profile. There are other stuff down here. Recommendations is an important thing. The other thing down here is skills here. This has become more important from a perspective of social proof. So building these is very important now. But this is the main stuff I've talked about. There's my rich content, rich media content, sticky content here, and also on my here. There's some videos there. Also on my summary, I think there's a couple as well. So that's pretty much it for the impactful profile. If there's any questions, please fire those in. I know I've got a question from Andy already. I will get to that. Don't worry, Andy, towards the end. But let's talk about using the platform proactively. Now, proactively. And the first thing I wanted to say is that LinkedIn is about one-to-one engagements. They talk about this in the executive playbook. It's about nurturing relationships over time. It is a time investment. But the time investment is not just creating the profile and sitting and waiting. The time investment is knowing where you're headed, having defined your destination, and then going out there and engaging directly through searches. Yeah, you can search here for free or on the paid platform. I'll show you that shortly. Through searches, connecting with target decision makers and finding a reason to get in touch with them. Okay, this is about finding a reason that's about them in the first instance, not about you or your need for a job. In fact, my advice to my clients is, when you are approaching a target employer, in the first instance, it's never about you. It's always about them, and you don't mention you're looking for a job. It's not what you talk about in the first instance because that puts people off. You're talking about common interest. If you understand a bit about the organization and the individual in that organization, maybe you're going to share an article with them that might help them. speaking to a problem or speaking to an aspiration. So you can connect with anybody on the platform. All you have to do is to find their profile, click connect, and personalize. You have to personalize, but when you personalize, let them know in the first instance by what you say that you've looked at their profile, there's maybe something in common, and build a relationship from there. Because once they're in your first tier connections, anything that you create, and I'm going to talk about that, we're talking about this here, anything you create in terms of articles, they have the probability of seeing. So it's very important to build reach and visibility. I have just under 10,500 connections. The more connections you have, the better, but the more connections you have of quality connections in terms of your target sector, the industry sector you operate in, then so much the better. But reach and visibility is important. Now, how else can you use things proactively? Let's say I wanted to. In fact, let's go into this. Let's go into the LinkedIn feed here. Okay, so for example, let's say that Michael was somebody that I wanted to get on. I wanted to get on Michael's radar. Okay, I wanted to get on his radar. What I can do, I've got these three buttons here. I've got a like, a comment, and a share button. Okay, now obviously you don't like stuff that you don't like, you don't comment on stuff that you don't have a reasonable comment to make, and you don't share stuff with your network because they will believe it's something you've endorsed unless you do endorse it. But if I wanted to get Michael's attention here, what I could do is like his post. I could comment on it, which is great because all the other people that have commented on it, not that there are as many on this one, but bad example, will see that I've commented on it and they'll be alerted to that. And if I share it, particularly if I use here the @ symbol, so I say, hey, great article by, and I type in Michael, I'm going to find him, hopefully. Where is he? There we go, here. And I click here. I can backtrack here, so I just use his first name, it's more personal, and I put, hi, great article by, thanks for sharing, Michael, or whatever it is, and I post it. He'll get an alert to know that I've shared his post. Great way to get on his radar. So if you are identifying decision makers and they have content that will sit on their profile here, activity, see all activity, it's a great way just to give them a little nudge. I call this my shark attack strategy. It's a bit like being sat in a boat and you're in the middle of the ocean and suddenly you get a bump on the bottom. You're going to take a look at what it is. So maybe bad analogy, but hopefully you won't forget that now. It's a great way to start to build conversations and start to have conversations with people. I use it all the time. Okay, and it's, you could argue it's less intrusive than a straight connection request. So your strategy could be, and your strategy is your strategy, you're trying to reach a decision maker, you like one of their posts, maybe you comment on one of their posts, and maybe 24 hours later or straight away you send a connection request and say, hey, just read your comment, your post, or whatever it is, really liked it, would be a privilege to connect. Nobody's going to turn you down for that. And once they're a first tier connection, then they're going to see the content that you create. So let me get back to that. So being proactive on LinkedIn, I believe, is about creating an inbound marketing strategy. Okay, it's knowing your target sector, it's knowing your target decision maker, and it's creating content that speaks into their problems or aspirations. So, I've got, goodness me, I think 124 articles on LinkedIn now that I've created. Let me just show you a couple. Crowd mentality and executive job search, for example. It doesn't get a huge amount of clicks. LinkedIn has put these, has made these less visible. You've got to keep posting them in the feed to get hits. But there is a probability that these will get picked up by the right people, because all of my posts speaking to the challenges of executive job search. So it may be that you're on this webinar because you clicked on one of my posts because you'd seen it in the feed. Maybe one of my first tier connections had shared it with you. You're a second tier connection, and that's how you got it. But whatever the reason, if you're creating this content, there is a probability that people will find it. The other more likely thing is this: if people find you in search results, they're going to look at your profile. They're going to scroll down, and one of the first things they're going to see, this won't be here, of course, that's just for me, they're going to see this, then LinkedIn puts this here. So it's pretty important. LinkedIn is telling you it's pretty important. And if somebody is interested in you, they are more likely to click on one of these pieces of content, particularly if it speaks into their problems or aspirations. And once you've got them reading your content, you've got them engaged. Okay, you've got them engaged. So it's really, really important to create this content. When I'm working with my private clients, I encourage them all to write a published post, an article on LinkedIn. Many find it difficult to begin with because they've never written a blog post before. But once they've done it once, I say to them, just do it. Just put it out there. Don't worry about what people are going to say. Just put it out there. And, 99% of the time, they're pleasantly surprised by how much engagement they get, how many likes, how many comments, people reaching out to them. It's a great way to connect with your network that isn't about being right up in front of them. And then you can use this, by the way. You can use this in your signature strip. You can create a signature in Linked Helper. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Or even when you're just connecting with people on the platform, you can you can say, hey, I just wrote this article, thought you might find it interesting, and share that URL in your message. It's a really, really powerful tool. The other thing on LinkedIn about being proactive is groups. Many of you using groups? Just let me know, yes or no. Are you using groups? Anyone using groups? Groups set up here. Okay, here, groups. Being in the right groups is very important. LinkedIn has downplayed this in recent times. These are my groups here. But being in groups is important because if you think about LinkedIn as the ocean, okay, then groups are like collections of ponds. Okay, and if you're in the ocean trying to catch a certain type of fish, well, if you throw your line into the ocean, well, there's a chance, but it's not a very big chance that you'll catch the right kind of fish. But if you go to the bit of the ocean that, that's where the salmon fish, and you put your line in, well, there's a really high probability chance that you're going to catch a salmon, and that's what you want. So there will be groups. You can search on groups. There will be groups on there that relate very specifically to your industry sector, your profession, or even your geography. And it's important that you are in those groups, not silent in those groups, but active in those groups. And that means liking, commenting, sharing your created content in those groups, and it starts to build your reach and visibility. The other special thing about groups, I mentioned the importance of connections, building connections. If you connect to a group that has 100,000 members, suddenly you have a special connection with those people in the group. It's called a group connection. And what that means is you can message people in the group. In fact, let me show you. You message people in the group even though you're not connected to them. Okay, so if I go into, let's go into this one. I'll go into this group. I'll go into the members, 26,000 members. Now, some of them I will be first tier connections with, but pretty much anyone, I can click message and I can message them even though I'm not connected to them. So it's another way to reach out to people, even if you're not connected to them, if you don't feel comfortable about making that connection request first off. Okay, so just a little bit of a whistle-stop tour about some of the things that you can use LinkedIn for more proactively. Now I'm going to talk about the thing that you may have signed up for this webinar for, which is automation. Okay, automation. And automation, just to caveat what I'm about to say. Earlier on I said that LinkedIn is about one-to-one connections. It is. Automation allows you to do more one-to-one connections and more one-to-one engagements. It allows you to do it faster. Yeah, on more of an industrial scale. But here's the thing. If I think back to the days where, I have a CRM. Okay, now I could send a message out to my whole CRM, all the people signed up for my newsletter and this, that, and the other, and I do that on a weekly basis. But if I wanted to go and send a specific message, I'd want to send it to a specific target audience. So the way to think about automation is you're not going to suddenly blanket a population of people with a message where that message bears no relevance. What you're going to do with automation is target a small number of people with a specific message that you know or you think has a high probability of resonating with them. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that now. So LinkedIn is still all about one-to-one, and with automation you can personalize the message. But you shouldn't be doing this to thousands of people at a time. It's a small collection of people. Linked Helper is one of the tools that is out there on the market that you can use to do this. And I've used a few other tools, tested a few other tools, and I have to say that this solution is probably the best one. Has anyone used this? Just before I go into it, some of my clients will have used this, but anyone else used it? Just let me know yes or no. And while you do that, I'll just show you where it sits. It's actually a Google Chrome plugin, and let me just share that with you now in the chat box. This is where you get it. What are people saying? Yeah, so quite a few people have used it. Quite a few people haven't used it, actually. So a few of you have, a few of you haven't. Okay, it's a Google Chrome plugin. So basically, you've got to be in a Google browser, and you click this Add to Chrome, and it turns up here. That's the LH up there. Now, the important thing with Linked Helper is this. There is a free version, and there is a paid-for version. Okay, if I go back here, you'll see that let me shut that down. I am on, where is it? Where's my license, my account? Oh, my licenses, okay. Yeah, I'm on an enterprise license, okay? I'm on an enterprise license. That's a paid-for license. Now, the way to get this is not particularly sophisticated. Sign up for the free version, then send an email to here and say you'd like to go onto an enterprise license. Costs about $99 a year. It may have gone up slightly since I signed up. Basically, what that does, you remember I said earlier that you've got to have a paid premium account on LinkedIn now to remove the restriction of how many people you can engage with. Well, it's exactly the same on Linked Helper. So unless you have the paid-for version, Linked Helper is going to stop you in your tracks. So you need the paid-for version on LinkedIn, the paid-for version on Linked Helper. But it's well worth the money. Trust me, I use this thing all the time. And I should say this, full disclosure, I am not on commission. I have no relationship with Linked Helper. I have no relationship with LinkedIn. So if you sign up for a premium account or you sign up for Linked Helper, I get no benefit at all. I'm just showing you this because it works for me. So I know it can definitely work for you. Now, one of the challenges people have with automation is it can be quite scary, okay? Because you're going to set automation things happening. And it can be scary because, things are happening without you touching the keyboard. But that's okay. That's okay. But my advice would be to start small. So don't do anything too sophisticated to begin with. And one of the first things you can do is to do something called Profiles Auto Visitor. So once you've got Linked Helper installed, you'll see it down here. And when I go into Linked Helper, I'm going to select what I want to do. So I'm going to go for Profiles Auto Visitor up here. There's various different things here. They have some really good videos on YouTube that will show you what to do and how to do it, and a user manual down here. So I'm going to go for Profiles Auto Visitor. Now what I do here, I'll go into my Sales Navigator, my premium account, and I will do a search. Okay, I'm going to do a search. Okay, and I prepared a search earlier. I'm just going to show you this just to save a little bit of time. If I can get into it. Yeah, here we go. So here's a typical search I might do. Your search will be very different. UK, United States. I always use Linked Helper with second tier connections. Why? Because second tier connections are going to be more familiar with you because you have a contact in common. When you start going out to third and everyone else, gets a bit not so good. So second tier connections really is where the power lies with Linked Helper. I've done a keyword search here, geography. Okay, kept it fairly simple. Gone for high level contacts. What I'm looking for here is people that could potentially need my services. So what I do here, I select Profiles Auto Visitor. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to collect contacts for auto visiting, and I'm going to create a new list to add them to. So I'm going to call this, I'll call this the webinar list, and I'm going to date it. So what are we, 15th, 2nd, 18, and I create. And I click Collect Contacts for Auto Visiting. Okay, and I'm not touching the keyboard now. Linked Helper is going through. It's collecting people that I have searched on. So it's quite a wide audience. It's about 647 people there. Okay, so it's collected some of these people now. So I'm going to stop it. You see that number there? That's going up. That's the people it's collected. I'm going to stop collecting people now. Okay, what I can do next is I can view collected. So if there's people that I don't want to auto visit, or I don't want to visit their profile, then I can take them out. All I need to do here is click say Alice, and I can move to the excluded list. Okay, so she won't get visited. Once I'm happy with that, I click close, and I simply where are we? Okay, click close, and where are we? Open List Manager. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to get into that. It's quite sophisticated. Where are we? What's going on here? Sorry. Go to the Visit tab here. Just ignore what I just did. Collect. They change this thing every now and again. They've just done a recent upgrade. So you go Visit. Okay. And where are we? Hit that, start profile visiting, and it's doing it automatically. Sometimes it sits on stop and you have to hit it to hit start. So I'm not touching the keyboard. I can go away, make a cup of tea, have a coffee, and it will visit up to 250 people depending on my search results in a 24-hour period. You can see it spaces out the time between each visit, and that's how it works. Okay, so that's the simplest thing you can use. Now I'm going to stop that now, and I'm going to show you something a little bit more sophisticated. So you can use this as well, which is collect, select, and invite second and third contacts. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go back to my list up here. Where are we? Go back to my list here. Okay, and I'm going to select in here, collect, select, and invite. And what I'm going to do, just to keep it, in fact, no, I better create a new one. Let's call this webinar again. For demonstration purposes. Okay, and I'm going to create, and what I'm going to do now in a slightly different search, I'm going to collect contacts for inviting. So I'm just going to collect a few. Okay, so just wait for them to collect. So it's a number of stages. You collect, then you edit, so you can remove people. So I've stopped that there. Okay, I can view collected, so there's a few people in there. Okay. Now, obviously, I would be a little bit more targeted in this list, and I would make sure that I was only going to message people that were absolutely spot on with the message I was going to send them. Okay, but time is against us, so what I'm going to do now is go into the message, and I'm going to go hi, and then I'm going to use the shortcode here, which is the squiggly bracket here, first name. Is that right? Spell that right? Yeah. I've got the microphone in front of me between me and the keyboard, which is never easy. I came across your... This is just an example. Your profile, and as we're second tier connections, I can't actually see the keyboard because of the microphone, so that's why I'm delayed. Second tier connections, it would be a privilege to connect, please. Okay, and then I go best wishes, Simon. What I often do is I'll do a PS, and I'll include a URL, a link to my recent blog post, because that tends to work quite nicely. People then engage your content. Yeah, make sure you've got that shortcode correctly. Profile as we're second tier connection, we're pretty going to get please. Okay, then I save the template. Okay, what I do next is I go invite. Okay, and this is where it gets scary. So it says stop. Yeah, it sometimes does that. So what happens now? I've done this quite quickly, so hopefully I haven't made a mistake. Start profile inviting. I'm not touching the keyboard. What will happen is it will go to that profile, and it should hopefully... Here we go. I'm not touching the keyboard. There we go. It's automating this, and it will do 100 in 24-hour period. Okay, so if you've got a really targeted group of people, I'm not touching the keyboard at all, a really targeted group of people that you want to connect to get on their radar, you can set this automation to run, providing you keep your browser open. Jobs are good. Okay, now for whatever reason that one's been blocked, that's probably because I've sent a connection request before. Okay, so don't worry. You know, some of them will be blocked. It's usually because you've sent a previous connection request that hasn't been accepted, and I've worked this list before, so that's probably why. The next thing goes in 32 seconds, 31 seconds, and that will just run here. I would recommend you stick with linked help as defaults, because then you're not going to get in trouble. It's a really, really useful tool. But it's not about marketing to big, or not about messaging big lists. What it is about doing is targeting, say, 20, 30, 40, maybe up to 100 contacts in your target sector, sending them a personalized message, maybe including a link to your article, getting on their radar. Okay, profile auto visitor. If you look at somebody's profile, you do that because you want them to look back at you. Then you get on their radar. And similarly with this, obviously, if you connect to them, they're more likely to look at you anyway because they're going to get a notification. I'm going to stop that now. That will just continue running. They're going to get a notification up here that says they have, here actually it would be my network, that you have a connection request. Okay, so that's Linked Helper. Very conscious of time, and I'll gladly take any questions that you have on that. There's various other tools that you can use here. You can create a signature, which I use. You can withdraw pending invites. So if you've you've used this quite extensively, you want to remove some of the outstanding invites, you can do that automatically. You can even extract CSV files and all sorts of stuff. You can message first connections, group members, they're a special kind of connection, and you can have a really good play with this. It's a really, really, really good tool. But the things I tend to use, a profile auto visitor, it's kind of a light touch, and then this on a more regular basis. So hopefully that was useful. Okay, so we've covered three things. We've covered how to create an impactful shop window, how to stand out on the platform to make sure you're doing what you should be doing, how to use it proactively, talked about articles and liking, commenting and sharing, and then I've shown you a couple of bits of automation to use as well. Now, for some of you, that may be all you need. Now, for others, particularly if you're not one of my clients and you're already involved with this, if you need a bit more help with your executive job search or need a bit more help on LinkedIn, there is a solution that I'm going to send you an email about, and I'm just going to pull up and show you quickly now. I have an online, it's kind of an online course, but it's a bit more. It's a little bit more than that. It's called the Executive Edge Program Online. Okay, you can watch a video on it. It'll tell you a little bit more. In fact, let me share this in the box here. Basically, what it is, it's a system for success in the executive job market. It takes my experience of the last 15 years and distills this into how you define, find, and secure the position you really want in the executive job market. And it talks about 5 distinct stages: environment, how the executive job market works; psychology, this is the most important thing, what you believe, how you think, and how you act, and that's the thing that really determines people's success or failure. Planning, this shows you how to get clear on your destination. And then process, and there are 8 steps. If you read my book, it kind of follows the same format, but it goes into much, much more detail. And in step 5, this is where I talk about LinkedIn. Higher cycle, social selling index, free versus premium, some of what I talked about tonight, but it goes into much, much more detail. And at the end of that, once you've done this part of the program, there's a complimentary LinkedIn review that we do together, one-on-one, via GoToMeeting. In addition to the content, which is accessible to you 24/7, there is a fortnightly group coaching call, which I know some of you come on, and there is also a private LinkedIn group where I post content for that group. So if you are needing some extra help in the executive job market, you want to supercharge your LinkedIn profile, then have a look at that link. Because you've come on the webinar, what I'm going to do is give you 50% off the monthly subscription. It's £99 a month, that's UK sterling. So for £49.50 you can trial this for a month, come to 2 group coaching calls, go through the LinkedIn stuff, and see whether it fits the bill for what you're looking for. There is no long-term commitment, so providing you've desubscribed by the end of the month, then you won't be charged again. I've got quite a few people in this now. It strikes the balance between having the content available to you at your fingertips to go through at your time when it suits, but also there's a fortnightly group coaching call where you can come on and ask questions specific to your situation. And in addition, as a thank you for coming on the webinar, for anybody that subscribes who is not currently a client, anyone that subscribes by the end of half an hour after we finish, so it'll be 8:30 UK time GMT, so 30 past the hour. What I'll do is, providing you're connected to me on LinkedIn, I'll record you a quick one-on-one video that will give you a bit of thoughts on your LinkedIn profile, 5-minute video, send it across to you, give you some pointers on what your profile looks like currently. But to get that, you've got to be in and signed up by half an hour after the hour when we finish. Just for my clients on here, got some private clients and Executive Edge Online clients. You're going to get that when you get to here in the program, where you're going to get your complimentary one-to-one session with me. Obviously, if you are a client and you want me to record you a quick 5-minute video, just let me know. Just send me an email. You've got my details. That's absolutely fine. But this is more for people who are just visiting this, I guess, for the first time. Okay, so that's that. We're going to deal with some Q&A now. Okay, so let me jump back to the slides. We're going to deal with some Q&A, and I've got some questions from earlier on. So that's Executive Edge Online. There's the Q&A. There's my email address in case you wish to contact me. So if you have any questions, I'm going to deal with those now. I'm going to go back to the start, to the first question. And what I'll do is I'll get through these as quickly as we can. If you need to drop off at 8 o'clock UK time, that's fine. That's in 5 minutes. For those of you who want your question answered, and if we run slightly over, then please feel free to stay. I'll make sure we get through all of the questions. Please have a check of your email. I've sent you some more information on Executive Edge Online. That will probably, or possibly, I shouldn't say probably, it may have gone into your spam folder. So just check that as well. But there'll be a link there, the link that I've shared here. So if you are interested in Executive Edge Online, then you'll find the details there. Okay, so here we go. Question for later. So Andy, you were first. Let me go into this question. How do you proactively manage your search and promotion in another country whilst currently employed in another? Okay, so that comes down to the thing I talked about, location. So you've got to set your location to the country that you're looking for employment in. That's very, very important. There's a whole host of reasons for that, but it's very, very important. And then because your location on LinkedIn will state that you're in the country that your destination country, you need to explain that in terms of your summary. But you then approach organizations directly and use the platform proactively, as I've shown you already. So some people have a little bit of an issue with that because they say, well, I'm not based there. No, but your intention is to be based there. Why are you using LinkedIn? You're using LinkedIn as part of your executive job search strategy. So the information you need to give people is not where you currently are, but where you're headed. And that also has some relevance for the professional headline, the LinkedIn headline. Okay, thanks for the question, Andy. So Jeff says, I have some media attachments in my LinkedIn profile to show some of the products I've developed over the years. I put them in the experience section under the headings that correspond to the job I had as the product was developed. I think that leads to burying the products. People have to scroll through my profile to find them. Is there a better way to highlight the products? Okay, well, the other way to do that is if you get this browser up, you can put them in the summary. Okay, so you can attach them in the summary as well. So you push them higher up the profile. I do a bit of a kind of mix and match. So I've got a couple of them in the summary, and then I've got some of them down here there that sit within the experience section. You might want to think about creating a post, an article which sits here and is very visible. If you've got links to stuff, if I show you this one, you can embed a video, you can do outbound links to whatever you want. That is slightly more visible, Jeff. So that might be something you could think about doing as well. Okay, Stuart, I'm clicking on the in, but didn't bring up that drop box. Okay, you don't click there. I may have misread this, Stuart, so forgive me if you can. You got to click here. Okay, and then click here, just on the pencil. I think that's what you're asking me. If it's not, just let me know further down. I'll get to it in a moment. But that's where you click. Okay, Jeff says, should I include a link to my paper resume that can be downloaded or printed? Where should it go? To be honest, Jeff, I wouldn't bother. Because let me tell you a bit of a story about CVs, resumes, and LinkedIn. When I was leaving the recruitment industry, and even now, even if people send me their CV and resume, which I don't generally read, the first thing I'll do is get the name and go to LinkedIn because it tells me a whole lot more. So, if somebody really wants your paper resume, they'll ask for it, but I wouldn't put it on here. I wouldn't put it on here. This is a much better platform for communicating you and what you're all about than a paper resume will ever be. One of the reasons for that is the recommendations that are down here, the rich media content, all the stuff that I've spoken about. So I really wouldn't bother. I do see people sometimes do that. You can if you want. I wouldn't recommend. It's not going to damage your profile, but I don't think it will add any value either. Okay, Tony, question for later. Can you have a LinkedIn profile that works for both the permanent and interim management markets? Yes, you can. And my view on that is this. If you're looking for a permanent position, then build your profile around the permanent position. Okay. But what you would talk about is in your summary that you're also available for interim roles. Some people say, well, could you have two profiles? I don't recommend having two profiles. The only reason you would have two profiles is if you have two different languages. You speak a non-English language and you need a profile in English as well. That's the reason you would have two profiles. But I would talk about stuff like that in here. I guess what you're doing in the permanent market would be quite similar in terms of the skills and experience that you're doing in the interim market. So I would just explain that in the summary. Dion, what is more important? Dion, great question. What is more important, endorsements or recommendations? Recommendations down here, much more important because there's a load of content. There's a load of narrative. There's a load of text. People are going to read this, and it's social proof as to what I'm saying earlier up on my profile. Skills and endorsements it's kind of important because it's again social proof, but there's not that textual element to it. There's not that explanation. So recommendations, Dion, is more important. Okay, thank you for all these questions, by the way. It's great. Okay, so Ihor says, Simon. Hi Simon. Hi Ihor. Thank you for your question. For the banner, I was told not to have too much text, just background, as it does not show up on a cell phone. Any thoughts? Exactly right. Okay, so if I go to my profile here, now let me minimize that. Where's the minimize button? Okay, don't worry. So if I do this, you're going to kind of see the cell phone view. Okay, so it does detract a little bit from what's visible on the cell phone. Don't have too much text. Images are more important, but I have this here because in terms of speaking to my target audience, it's a powerful message that I want them to see. And more and more people, 55-60% of people are looking at stuff on their mobile phones now. But you've got to balance it, haven't you? Something like this I think is fine, but you are right, Ihor, that not all of the text will be seen on a mobile device. But there are so many different types of mobile device now. It's very, very hard to get it right, and it's extremely difficult to do that when it comes to websites as well. I know, because I'm just revamping mine. Okay, so Stuart asked me a question. When out of work for a while, what do you recommend for a current role profile? Okay, good question, Stuart. What I see some people do is under here, their recent experience, they put kind of, maybe not seeking opportunities, never do that, but they put kind of consulting or whatever else. If you are consulting and you've been doing that as a profession, that's fine. My recommendation is that your current role, although it's not your last role, stops at the date it stops, and you explain in your summary that you are, the reason for that. Okay, so what I say here up here is don't say you're currently seeking opportunities here, but you can communicate your availability here. There is nothing wrong, by the way, with being out of a position. I think people become slightly worried when they're out of an executive position for a period of months, 6 months or whatever else. That is perfectly normal at the executive level. And providing you explain to employers what you've been doing, providing you've kept busy and active during that period of time, it's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. When I coach my private clients, I always say to them, it's probably more of an issue to you being out of work for a what they may regard as an extended period of time than it will be to an employer. An employer is just concerned with, well, can you help them or not? Okay, are you the right candidate for them? Okay. Pujan says, what is the professional badge? Well, that's this. Okay, that's when you have a paid account that will display on your profile. How do you add it? It will add by default. If you don't have a premium account, you won't see it. If you have a paid account and you can't see it, all you need to do is to click where I've just clicked, and just switch that on, so the blue will be showing. Okay, so Poojan, you've asked me quite a big question there. I'm going to have to answer it, but kind of not answer it at the same time. How to engage people and how to engage people without asking for a job. That's a big question. That's probably a subject of a whole webinar altogether. We've spoken before, Poojan, about Executive Edge Online. That is where you need to head to get the answer to that question. In Executive Edge Online, I talk in here. Okay, it starts here. How to write an impactful cover letter, how to get in front of decision makers, and there's an hour and 30 minutes or so of content there just to explain that one point. So it is possible, but the way to think about that first off is not to worry about LinkedIn as a tool to do it. It's to get clear on how you do it, and then LinkedIn is a tool. It's a medium that you can use to engage with people that you don't currently know. But it's absolutely possible. It has to be about them in the first instance, and it has to be relevant to them. I talk about something called the executive job seeker dichotomy, the grab a message and call to action. If you're asking me about the mechanics of how you connect to somebody, I talk about this in the LinkedIn section. It's quite a big section, this, as you can see. How to connect with people you don't yet know. It's here somewhere. Where is it? You can never find it when you want it. It's in there somewhere. Here we go. Your contact information and how to connect with someone you don't know. So really good question, Poojan, but sorry, I can't go into too much detail because we're about over time now, but you will definitely find the answer to that and much, much more in Executive Edge Online. Okay, very conscious of people's time. I want to thank you all for joining me on this session. Hopefully you found something useful. Hopefully you've learned something. I attend a lot of webinars on a lot of different subjects, and my judge as to whether a webinar has been worth my time is if I've learned one thing that I can then implement, and implementation is important. If I've learned one thing that I can then take away, a golden nugget to take away and implement, then it's been worth the time. So hopefully that's been your experience. There will be a quick survey to fill in at the end. If you'd be good enough to do that, let me know any feedback, comments. That will be fantastic. If Executive Edge Online is something you're interested in, if you go to the page, I've sent you the link to this. If you go to the page, watch the video, that will explain everything you need to know about it. And if you do need to or want to reach out to me with any questions, that's my email address. For those of you that are going to get on board with Executive Edge Online, if you're in there by 25 minutes from now, then over the next couple of days, I'll shoot you a quick personalized video which will just do a quick critique of your LinkedIn profile as it stands at the moment. Once you go through the content and you're encouraged to do the amends to your LinkedIn profile, then you would have the opportunity, as my existing clients do, to do a complimentary one-to-one session with me where we jump on a go-to meeting, just you and I, and we talk about that in much more detail. So thank you for being here. You have a great rest of day. I'll be running another webinar next month. You'll all get an invite to that. Be on something slightly different. Reputation, I think we're talking about next month. But take care and have a great rest of day, great rest of evening, and I'll talk to you again soon.